Kia ora and welcome to the Creative Matters podcast, where we have inspiring conversations with New Zealand artists. I'm your host, Mandy Yarkich. These conversations are intimate, uplifting and insightful. The guests on the show have absolutely enriched my life, and I'm sure their stories will have the same effect on you. Thank you so much for joining me to listen to these amazing people speak about what drives them, the way they work, and their personal takes on life. Hi, and welcome back to Creative Matters. This week in episode 73, I'm speaking with Sefton Rani. Sefton works out of Piha, a coastal settlement west of Auckland. He describes himself as a self-taught maker who uses paint as his material of choice to create modern Pacific art. Paint skins are collaged or simply allowed to float as a sculptural object.
I like that idea of wabi-sabi, like the beauty of imperfection. I like that idea of sort of the history of items, the lineage of these things. And so when I'm painting with dried paints, and then I'm thinking about visually, how do you attach that? Because wet paint, you've got a binder and it just naturally sticks. But, am I attaching that with screws? Am I doing it with adhesive? How do I kind of have that trompe-l'oeil effect of fall in the eye so that actually these solid pieces of paint actually look like the original item because they've got the patina on it.
Sefton is of Cook Island heritage. His work enables him to explore his Pacificness and navigate his Pasifika identity within the broader context of New Zealand. In this episode, we have a lovely chat about how the February 2023 cyclone has affected Sefton's studio and how this event may influence his next body of work, how he sees his work as industrial tapa, which is influenced by the marks, patterns, motifs and forms of traditional tapa, as well as carving, tattoo, weaving and tuvaiwai. And we also talk about the value he places on community within his art practice, his goals to be represented in galleries around the world, and the lenses that have impacted his work. Morena, Sefton.
Greetings and salutations.
Nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you as well and have this opportunity.
Thank you so much for coming, and a big warm welcome to Creative Matters.
Thank you. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, so I'm looking forward to being a part of it.
Thank you. It's so nice to have you as a guest. And we have something in common, and that is that our communities have both been victim to Cyclone Gabriel, which is the cyclone that happened on the 13th of February 2023 in Auckland and other parts of New Zealand. And you are from Piha and I'm from Muriwai, and we've both had a lot of devastation in our communities. And I know that you've had to move out of your home and your studio. So how are you feeling?
A little bit like a refugee, displaced, I guess. I guess a lot of people from our communities just in this no man's land where you can't go into your home to live. You have this constant concern about, whether it's looters or vandalism. You lose your home. For me, I've lost my studio, my creative space. And you're just in this kind of time warp where you don't have knowledge of timelines as far as getting back to your home. You're waiting on insurance companies or other kind of companies or institutions to dictate your life, and you just don't have a timeline to work towards.
Yeah, it's really tough. And you lost a lot of work out of your studio?
I lost about 50% of the work that I've created over the last 10, 11 years that was still in the studio. And everything that I'd been creating, getting ready for a show at Scott Lowry Gallery in mid-May, so that was all lost, so that's all got to be created for that show in 2 months' time.
Oh, it's such a tough time.
It's an interesting time, but it is what it is, and just trying to look at where this situation is going to take the work, and there'll be a hard pivot from what I normally do anyway, just because I don't have the time, and I've lost summer to create the paint skins and things that I normally work with. So it's at one level it's frustrating and everything else, but it's also exciting. It's maybe a new direction or a better direction for me. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, sometimes good things come out of challenging times, and I guess it's going to make you sort of reassess things and think about things possibly in a different way, which could be good for your practice.
Yeah. I mean, I think there'll be a different type of materiality that's going to come out of what happens going forward for sure.
Yeah. So can we go all the way back, Sefton, to your childhood? Can you tell us, where you were born and what sort of child you were?
So I'm from Auckland, originally from Avondale, and I don't know, I was a kid that, I don't know, I liked stuff, collecting stuff. Pretty strange little kid in some ways, I guess. I can always remember like walking home and picking up a stone and bringing it home and creating this little pile for some reason. But I liked making things or trying to make things. My father, he's from the Cook Islands. He worked in a paint factory in Rosebank Road in Avondale, and so he'd bring back bits and pieces that maybe were going to be thrown out. So there's always kind of stuff or forage things around the home, and I think that kind of has led to the type of art that I'm making now. Back when I was, I can remember I was probably 3, maybe 4 years old. The factory burnt down. It was like one of the biggest industrial fires that ever happened in Auckland. I mean, it was huge. And I can remember going there, I think it was a Sunday, the day after, and the warehouse was still smouldering. All this paint, was just burnt, or, just this kind of mess, basically. And I think that's imprinted itself on me, and that's why my work looks like and feels like it does now. It took me a long time to kind of realize probably that was that lens that impacts my work now. And I mean, as I grew up, I kind of went further west, into Glen Eden, Oratia. Always drew. Like my dad was a good drawer, but never did anything with it. But always kind of drew just comics and things like that, just copying things, and then took art through high school, through to my final year in 7th form. And that was kind of almost the end of that art track at that stage, until I went working in hospitality in hotels in New Zealand, around the world, Sydney, New York, Hong Kong, China, and Shanghai, Guangzhou, Koh Samui, Thailand. Yes, I mean, that's kind of the pre-artist life, I guess.
And were you ever thinking in your sort of art school, at high school, when you were taking art, were you ever thinking that might be something that you would like to do, or was that not really a consideration at that time?
No, I mean, I never really saw a future in anything to do with art. I don't think I was good enough, to be honest. Like I took it all the way through school, but yeah, I mean, an artist wasn't really a career or a job. And I can remember my art teacher saying to me, you're not good enough for art school. So that kind of, sort of crossed that off the list. And
isn't that terrible? That really makes me cross when I hear those stories.
I mean, it is what it is. But I think I was successful at school, but I think I'd had enough, and I actually just wanted to go and work. So I just, like I was the only guy from my class that didn't go to university, for example. I just had zero interest in it. I just wanted to go out and just do something different, I guess, rather than study just for the sake of studying.
So you had a good career in hospitality.
Yeah, I did all right. It was about probably 25 years, starting from the bottom, sort of carrying bags as a porter back in the day, and then kind of rose through the ranks to concierge, which is like the department head there, and then somehow fell into being the IT manager. Did that for a couple of years in Auckland, transferred across to Sydney for 5 years as the regional IT guy for our hotel company, and then to New York for a couple of years, heading up IT in a call centre there, and then across to Hong Kong, front office manager there, and then just doing projects, just opening up hotels. Came back to Auckland for a little bit, did a couple of years sort of doing TQM, total quality management, just about systems and processes and things like that. So they had a wide range of, I guess, skills that weren't necessarily art, but even when I was working in IT, actually I just saw it as being creative, but in a different way. So if you're, designing, global networks or stuff like that, it's just a different type of creativity.
Yeah, brilliant. Wow. And then how did you come to start making yourself?
So basically I had an opening up in Guangzhou in China. So I was meant to go up there to work full time, and I just didn't want to do it. So they sort of twisted my arm and said, you've got to go up there for 8 months and just get the hotel up and running. So I did that, and it was just a nightmare. It was just the worst site you could ever hope for, and I just had enough. And my partner at the time, she was up there with me. It was part of the deal. If I'm going up there that long, she needs to come up with me. And one day I just said to her, look, I'm done. I've had enough of this. I want to try and make it as an artist. Maybe a year before that, I'd started, being a weekend painter, just playing around, shuffling around paint. And I just said to her, yeah, I'm done. I want to do this. And she didn't even blink. She's like, yep, you need to do it. Go for it.
Wow.
And so I resigned. And unfortunately, it was like I had to give 3 months notice, which was like maybe the longest 3 months of my life.
Yeah, it's so hard, isn't it?
And came back to Auckland, and basically the Monday after I landed, I'm standing in a room going, okay, I'm an artist, what do I do? And that's kind of how it started.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know if it's amazing or stupid really, but
it's pretty gutsy. I mean, a lot of people, start sort of gently and slowly and have a part-time job or do it on the side, paint at night, that kind of thing. What do you think gave you the strength to commit wholeheartedly?
I think sometimes you can't have one foot over the line. Like, I guess I've been quite successful in a lot of the things that I've touched in my life, and I'm not going to do it half-hearted. Like it's if I'm in, it's all chips are in, and the time and effort that it would take me in the jobs that I was doing, like if you're working long days or you're having to do these openings, you just don't have the energy to come home and paint. And I wanted to give it a good nudge. I mentioned that I was, literally I was concierge on the Friday and an IT manager on the Monday without any IT background. And that was the biggest step in a corporate world that I could ever take. And it was difficult, but nothing that I probably do in my life is ever going to be worse than that. So, and the thing is this, I take the jump, and if I like it, I keep doing it. And if not, I do something else, and whether it's because I fall out of love with it, or maybe I'm not good at it to make it commercially doable. like I don't have a problem shedding a label, shedding the artist label or the whatever label you want to stick on your head. It doesn't matter, But I had some advice from friends. They said do it for at least 2 years. When financially it begins to hurt, don't flinch, keep going. And I just worked, because work ethic is the secret sauce to anyone's success. And so I worked hard and 7 days a week and saw what I could make from it.
That's amazing. It's such an inspirational story. There's so many people who want to do that with their art practice but don't quite manage to.
But there's people that do that in life. Like when I was in Hong Kong and I resigned, I did that just to go backpacking, and I had a lot of people then saying, I wish I could do that, but, I've got a career, or I've got a family, or I've got whatever the excuse is. Sure, you know what? I had mortgages still, I had a career, and so what? I resigned. I, got to work in China a couple of times and in Thailand, backpack, travel a lot, come back to New Zealand, work, get more opportunities to travel, to work overseas. If I had to have planned that, I would have spent all that time planning and still not have been able to do it, Like sometimes you need to just empty the cup and the universe will fill it for you. And I guess I had confidence in the skill set that I'd built up in the different jobs that I'd been doing around the world. And so that gave me maybe a layer of knowledge or confidence that, maybe your average artist jumping in may not have. And I guess that helped me navigate my way through a little bit.
And what kind of work were you making? And actually, what year was it that you started?
So I was 42 when I made the jump, so, and part of that too was I didn't want to be on my deathbed going, what if? Like there was a window there at that time that if I didn't take it, it was probably never going to happen. And, I'd rather try and fail than never know. And so that was just part of it.
So how many years ago was that?
So that was 11 years, about 11 years now.
And what kind of work were you making at that time?
Junk, basically. I guess a lot of stuff with text, I guess influenced by, Hoteri and McCann. But when I was like backpacking and traveling, like I was taking a lot of photography because I was traveling through these cool places, like I was up in Tibet, I was, in India, through Southeast Asia and stuff. So taking a lot of photographs, but also doing a lot of writing at the end of the day because I was just traveling on my own. And then I would condense, maybe 5-6 pages of just thoughts and try and get down to an essence of maybe 3 lines. So I like sort of writing and that type of thing. So so the work, sort of had text in it, but it's kind of interesting looking back. Like I still have the very first work that I created when I came back to New Zealand, and I had text, but it also had a form of paint skin in it, which I just see as interesting because it was just the way I created it, I'd never seen before. But obviously there was something in there that needed to come out, and all I've pretty much done is just ride that horse and put it on steroids and to get to the type of work I'm doing now.
Yeah. So with that work, was it sort of more painterly and using paint brushes and that kind of thing on canvas?
Yeah. I mean, there was, I guess then I would have called myself a painter, whereas now I think of myself as a maker. Just because I'm making the materials that I'm using, there's jigsaws and drills and stuff as much as paintbrushes in the studio.
Yeah, maker fits well for that, for your kind of work. And so When did you actually start really exploring the materiality of paint?
Um, yeah, I mean, it was just, I guess it was a slow process. It's one of those things that's, if I do this and there's one layer, what does it look like with two? What does it look like with five? And then, okay, this material doesn't hold up if I do that. So, I spent probably 6.5 years, 7 years in the studio, literally my wife and a couple of friends who were art collectors or friends who knew me in the hotel world before I became, the artist. They were the only ones that knew what I was doing in the studio. No one had a clue. And so a lot of that time was just experimenting with material, experimenting with form and shape, trying to make the stuff work. So it was a slow process, but in that I had, I guess, a plan, and the plan was always I wasn't going to show the work before it was ready. And then the plan was kind of, this kind of like shock and awe where it's like I'm going to line up a ton of shows and just go. So, from the time I first started showing, the last probably 2.5, 3 years, I've done 25 shows. So probably half of those solo, half of those group shows.
That's a lot of shows.
Yeah, it is. But full time, I make a lot of work, and if I'm not showing, then what am I doing? And yeah, so it's been a production line, I guess, but the process to get the work ready for those shows has allowed me to stress test the material even more. Because part of it's panic, but part of it's just, you're trying to almost make a production line of this stuff. So, and if you had to come past my studio in Piha, literally the whole driveway, which is about 15 meters long, is just covered in paint skins, so there's, 4 or 5 months of just creating these things over summer. And so with that volume, you get the time to see what materials work, what doesn't, and some of these pieces are like 40 layers deep, so they take a long time to create. But I like that idea of sort of a lineage, and just of the material and how it works, how it does its thing under its own weight, I guess.
Yeah. So we can talk a little bit more about the materiality of what you do. But can you just maybe describe your work for somebody who's not familiar with it?
So the work predominantly is made out of paint skins. So by that I mean I'm literally painting glass or plastic or objects, putting layers of paint on it, anywhere from one layer through to, say 40 or so, and then just peeling it off. And so effectively I'm painting with dried paint. So I'm looking for objects that have patinas, sometimes text, which will come out in reverse. But I like that idea of wabi-sabi, like the beauty of imperfection. I like that idea of sort of the history of items, the lineage of these things. And so when I'm painting with dried paint, so then I'm thinking about visually, how do you attach that? Because wet paint, you've got a binder and it just naturally sticks. But, am I attaching that with screws? Am I doing it with adhesive? How do I kind of have that trompe-l'oeil effect of fall in the eye so that actually these solid pieces of paint actually look like the original item because they've got the patina on it? And so these things are either collaged onto surfaces. Sometimes if you've seen some of my drum pieces or my tire pieces, they just float on the wall as a free floating object. And then with that, I have this, I guess, Pacific lens that I look through. So, a lot of the work that, to be honest, hasn't really been seen, but is currently sitting in the studio, is just about objects, and thinking about, when you go into museums and you you see these objects that sometimes you don't know what they are. And so sort of working with those kinds of ideas, again, with paint skins, but also just making. Just kind of not with any necessarily diagrams that I'm making to it. It's just kind of on the fly and just seeing what comes out of it.
So interesting. And you did have some time working in a paint factory. Was that where your dad worked in Avondale?
So my dad worked at British Paints in Avondale, and I guess from a little kid, probably from like 3 or 4, I'd go down maybe on Saturday mornings, because there's no occupational health and safety back in those days. So you'd sort of be around the factory, the smells, looking at the spilled paint, the detritus in the factory. And then as I got older, like as a job, during school holidays, I'd work there. And then when I first kind of left school, I worked in there for a bit, before I sort of got out of that environment.
Yeah. And it's obviously just stayed with you, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's the smells. There's certain smells when I open up a tin of varnish, for example, like it just takes me back to a visual, of that room where the varnish stuff was made, or, these huge, like 10,000 litre, tanks of paint. So it's, so for me, paint is an object. It's not this lipstick that comes out of a tube. It's, it's weighty. It's, you've seen the stuff that goes in to make it. And so it becomes this kind of different object, no different than wood or something like this.
Yeah. And your work is very sculptural, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's, I try not to play to any rules, and I kind of like the fact that, people paint with with wet paint, and I'm painting with wet paint, the rule is, you shouldn't touch the painting, so I'm drilling straight through the surfaces of it, and, things are meant to have like nice gilded frames, and mine are just slathered with paint and beaten up. So it's not that I'm trying to be a rebel or anything, but I like kind of going against the grain a little bit. Yeah.
And then you add things like, well, you're still using the text that you spoke of earlier, but sometimes that's in quite a graffiti form, isn't it? As well as sort of embossing from the materials that you're using.
Yeah, there's that. And, and I've, recently been playing with lead. I like the thought of, if a nuclear bomb comes off, it's still going to withstand that. I like the fact that it's poisonous, but I can sort of press letters into that and get forms off of it as well. So I like that kind of, that pressing the materials into another material and leaving a permanent imprint.
Yeah, so beautiful. And then you're using motifs and symbols and pattern a lot through your work, which is obviously referencing your Pacifica heritage. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's like I like the repetitive pattern, and we see it, in our normal day life, whether you're looking at, yellow and black stripes on, caution signs or, zebra crossings or things like that. So sort of the yellow and the black features a lot in my work. But, some of the motifs, there's like a double K motif that references 2 brothers who are on Mangaia, which is the southernmost island in the Cook Islands where my father comes from. And, the story is that they went into battle and they were in this kind of narrow ravine, and they tied themselves back to back to go into battle, so that if one of them fell, then the other could keep the other brother up, and also so no one could sort of sneak up on them. So that double K motif you'll see in a lot of carvings, the ceremonial edges that come from that island. So it's just a link for the work that I embed in there from time to time.
And the sort of reference to tapa cloth or bark cloth, do you see that as coming through all your work, or just certain parts of it?
Yeah, I mean, if you think of tapa as a material, you're taking layers of fiber and you're beating it and you're layering it up, and in a lot of ways that's how my paint skins are created. There's there's layers of paint. Once the material's formed, sometimes I'll be using a torch to burn it. Sometimes I'll literally be beating it. I'll be screwing stuff through it. So there's that form of not only the layering of the material, but also just that really rough treatment of it to get the basic material there that you can use. And yeah, so I refer to it as, urban tapa or industrial tapa, as, using sort of modern materials to create a similar kind of feel of it.
Yeah, totally. And a similar process. I mean, it's different, but it's that kind of idea of the work to prepare the material that sort of informs the final product.
Yeah, I mean, the work, it's about labour. It's the labour to create it. It literally takes me 4 or 5 months to put this stuff together in the hot summer sun. And, I equate that to, whether it's migrant communities, whether they're Pacificka or other, that come to countries and quite often they're doing those manual jobs and tasks that, other people don't want to do, and I kind of identify with that when I'm making that work.
And has your work got a sort of narrative, a sense of storytelling, as well as that sort of sense of pattern, do you think?
Whether it's the colour, there's blues that I use that I think of like referencing the moana, the oceans. A lot of the materials that I use will have corrugations in them, so whether that lines up with the industrial environments that people find themselves in, or the security that corrugated iron roofs or fences give people, but it also references the waves in the ocean that you see. Depending on the work, some of the titles refer to various laws that were brought into most of the world, but in the Cook Islands, the blue laws, so outlawing tattooing and things like that. So sometimes the message is in the title, and then just trying to link the fact that you have a law that says if you tattoo someone or if you receive a tattoo, then you have to be punished, and the punishment is you need to weed an area that's 12 yards by 12 yards as your punishment, and these are, to me, in hindsight, and probably then they're just ridiculous laws, but we have similar laws that are impacting us today, that people impose on the population that, in time people are going to look back and go, this is nonsense, and so I like that parallel of, the same kind of stuff's still happening, and if you understand how to read the work, those messages are there, like I was playing with prior to the flood, just thinking about depression and how, over the COVID time, people were locked up, depression, suicide, things like that are up, and how do you show that in the work, and then I look at, say, Pacific peoples where, the culture's destroyed, people are locked up for no reason, and someone's lost a whole culture, and how does that impact the people versus, people that are lost a little bit of freedom for 4 months, and one's obviously far more dramatic than the other, but the consequences aren't really thought about, and how that's impacted them not only then but now, and how that has been fed through.
Yeah. And you are sort of acknowledging those who have walked before you, but you're kind of setting your own path as well with your work.
Yeah. The ancestors are always there, there's always that sense of, they're there, they're watching you. But for me, maybe it's just the way that I see things, but I need to walk past that. I think it's very easy for, any artist, but, Pacifica especially, with I think some island groups that I've seen, it's hard to walk away from the standard motifs, the standard materials. Maybe they might move past that, but the motifs, they're using modern pigments, but actually the marks are still the same. And that's totally fine if that's the direction that you feel pulled to create, or that's how you want to make, then lean into it and go harder. But for me, it's like, how do I make work that doesn't just sit here in Auckland and people go, oh yeah, his dad's from the Cook Islands, that makes sense, he's from New Zealand, that makes sense. It's like, how do I take that work and I drop it in London, or I drop it in Berlin, or I drop it in New York, and people can resonate with it. They may or may not know the story, but it stands up.
Yeah.
And how do I take that story internationally, I guess, but also how do I just keep pushing that narrative, because, back in the day, Europeans came and suddenly you look in the churches and there's the traditional carving, but there's also European text in there, so they didn't hesitate in looking at new ideas and
combining.
Yeah, and it's like, this is the new world I'm in, and this is it, right? So if I'm standing here with, some Pacific background, and I've got an environment that's not coconut trees and, and taro and beaches, but it's factories, it's roads, it's cars, how do I show that and combine the two?
And you do refer to your work as industrial tapa or urban tapa. So it really does feel like it's connecting quite strongly to urban life in New Zealand, which is what you're part of, I guess. Yeah. It would be really interesting to think how you would present this kind of work overseas.
Yeah, to be honest, you can write all you want to, and you can do the videos or whatever, but most people, they walk in and it either grabs them or it doesn't, and, so my, the way I see it is, my job as an artist is to make the work undeniable. So whether you like it or not, it's still going to stop you and make you want to engage with it, spend some time with it, even though it may not be your intention, but it just pulls you. And artwork, it happens in your head. It doesn't happen on the wall, and so people all pull what they want from it. Like every artist has had, they've created a work, they've had an idea in their head of this is what it's going to be. And then someone will say, oh, I see this or I see that. And you never in a million years would have thought that your work was referring to that, but someone else sees it. So
that's right, which is so amazing. And do you see your work as a form of printmaking as well as painting?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I do these drums. So, I mean, the easy way to describe it is I put 40 layers of paint on a 44-gallon drum, and then I peel it off. And then you have this drum form. And someone actually said to me, oh, so it's a form of monoprint. And I'd never actually thought about it that way, but it's like, actually, you know what, they're actually right. Yeah. And I've often kind of thought of myself as a printer that's trying to paint or trying to make, because it's very process based. So yeah, and like I have text, like letterpress type text that I use, which I guess is a different form of printing as well.
Totally. It's very interesting. And I've sort of noticed that you do have sort of quite a lot of either horizontal or sort of vertical feels to your work, and some works have both. Are you referencing anything with the horizontal and vertical?
So depending on the work, so I have these tire pieces which are they're roughly 2.4 meters long. And so if you imagine basically a tire just in a straight line, that's what they are, but they're just made out of solid paint. So when I'm doing those vertically, I'm thinking about I guess, spirituality. I'm thinking about like spiritual growth. So from the physical to, maybe after you pass, to the ancestors or things of that nature. Whereas quite often if I'm doing horizontal works, I'm thinking more about just sort of timelines and life in a linear process, sort of people's like kind of life growth or timelines or things of that nature.
Interesting. And is it ever referencing land?
Just think of them as landscapes, but take it, if you're in a plane looking down, so if you look at some of the big yellow can pieces that I do, when I was in Tibet, you'd be in the mountains and you'd see these big valleys of rapeseed flowers, in different hues of yellow. And so that's kind of what they're referencing, those kind of yellows.
Yeah. And even it has a sense of sort of fields and different land spaces sometimes.
Yeah, well, and then because they're done with the cans, the cans are corrugated, so you have that thought of, whether they're, fields of, whether it's taro or other sorts of vegetables that have been grown in those sorts of fields as well, yeah.
If we just talk about your process, you obviously spend a lot of time, making the skins, as you said, which is going to be difficult, isn't it, now? Have you actually lost a lot of the skins for your next body of work?
Lost all of them.
All of them?
Yeah, so I managed to save five pieces that are in my new studio. But yeah, so the show going forward, other than those, there'll be nothing there not with thick paint skins anyway. There might be like a couple of layers deep, but yeah, nothing really dense.
Which is a shame, but as you said, it could bring out other potentials.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about it at all. Like it is what it is. And there's different things that I've been playing with, and there's different things that I find my work's not kind of linear in that it's more like a cycle, like a circle. So I do one, then I do another, then I do another, and it comes back to the beginning again. So I think I was ready to get to that point anyway. So we'll we'll see. It's interesting. It'll be a good time to pivot. So we'll see what happens.
It might be a really interesting catalyst. So just speaking of your process again, you create all of these skins and you're obviously thinking about colour and texture and that kind of thing. Are you actually thinking in your mind of what you're creating and then you make the skins, or are you just making a whole bunch of different skins and then they sort of inform what you create?
I usually have a vague idea, and colour-wise I have to choose, because your average artist, they'll start painting and then maybe it's like, I need a bit of blue or orange or whatever, and so they'll get the tube and they'll squeeze it out. Whereas I have to make orange and I have to make blue, and that might take a month. So basically I'm making the colour decisions, sort of 6 to 12 months out from creating the work, and then based on those decisions, I'm kind of stuck with it for the and from there I just try and let the work guide me. It's very clear to me that the work comes through me, not from me. So I need to get out of the way and let the work kind of inform itself.
You're responding to what you've created and the mahi, I guess, that you've put in over those months. And then how do you actually work with the skins and how do you put it all together?
Basically I'm creating on the horizontal. So typically I've got some big tables that I'm just kind of laying stuff out with, and usually I've got kind of one making table which is slightly higher, and then I have another large table that's lower, and typically I'm just kind of laying things out, and then as I'm walking past it through the day, I'll move something an inch to the left and a centimetre to the right until it kind of feels right. And and then typically it's just using adhesives to lock it down. There's screws and things that are there, but it's more, they're not functional. It's more to give you an idea that, because the stuff looks like metal, painted metal. So, it's like, so how would you affix that to a surface and have it make sense to the eye if you're looking at it? So that's the reason why I include those.
Oh, that's really interesting. I thought they were actually sort of part of your fixative process.
I mean, some of these skins are heavy. I mean, maybe 10 kilos or more. So the nature of the material and the screws just wouldn't hold. They just tear in 2 seconds flat.
So what do you use? What kind of glue?
It's I don't know the make of it, but if you go into a Mitre 10, you'll see there's a glue that holds 320 kilos, and that's the stuff. And only because of the alchemy I have with the paint and the chemistry that's in it. There's a few different things that are mixed in. Partly to allow the paint to keep its form when it gets solid, so it doesn't fall apart.
Oh, that's interesting.
So these are highly resistant to most adhesives. And this is the only one that I've found that, it doesn't repel.
Well, so you've done a lot of, over the years, I guess, a lot of experimenting.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of wasted material.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like a lot of these things are expensive, so these, like people come and they'll ask, oh, how do you do it? And I mean, I'm happy to show them because no one else is stupid enough to put in the time, and the money, because they're expensive to make. And, by the time you make them, you sell them, you're selling them at cost. You make no money from these things. Yeah, so that's why I'm always happy to share the juice. Yeah.
And as far as the gloss and matte side of things, some of your works, like the blue one with the screws, is really super glossy, isn't it? Is that just something that you apply on the last layer, or
that's just the paint?
The paint.
Yeah, I like that industrial shiny look. But a lot of the pieces that you see that are matte, they probably come off of the surface like that. So so actually, if you saw the backside of that paint skin, actually it would be gloss. But because it's pulled the patina off of the item it's been created on, that's why it'll show as matte.
Right. Very clever. So, how do you find being part of the art world in Aotearoa?
I'm not really sure. I just do me. I think I've been very lucky that my second show in, which was down at the Franklin Arts Centre, I met Andy Lalacewell. Because then, up until then, I met with Jeff Thompson, and he kind of showed me what it was to be an artist. Because like I mentioned, Monday I was an artist, and I'm standing in a room going, now what do I do? And a friend of mine took me up to his studio, and I, sort of helped him in sort of quote marks, to do some stuff. But I was doing that, but I was actually just kind of watching him, and I realized actually you just get on with it. That's what an artist does. They see the world and they interpret it and they get on with it. But I was lucky at my second show that I met Andy, because for me, he's not only inspirational in that he's persevered. He came from working in a factory as well. He had, I think it was like 11 shows that. His first 11 shows, he didn't sell a thing, but he persevered, But he helped me understand, I guess, the Pacificness of my work. I was kind of clutching around in the dark for a long time, just trying to place it and to make sense of it. And he just kind of, I guess, gave me that light bulb moment where it's like, oh yeah, of course, it's right in front of me. And from that point onwards, it became much easier. But I guess the wonderful thing with him is he's got a community around him, and I guess from that I've found my place, I guess, in the New Zealand art world, I guess. I don't know, probably not the New Zealand art world, but certainly in my little community, like I've found a place, an understanding. There's another artist as part of our group, Marcus Hepper, who, similar to me, was working a job, quit to do his art full time. So we're kind of about the same level. We were trying to just work through things and try and get ourselves up on the stage and to get some spotlights on us to, promote not only the work, but, the communities we try and represent. But yeah, I mean, I've been lucky that, around me I've had different, I guess, New Zealand artists that, haven't necessarily made me part of the art world, but, I've had, a person like Gretchen Albrecht, for example, who, her and her husband, Jamie Ross, they'll give me little tidbits. Oh, you had a successful show, but you've got to do this, this and this. Or, if I go to a gallery opening, she'll be like, oh, have you met this person? Oh, this is so-and-so. And so she's just making those little introductions and things like that.
It's so important, isn't it, that community? And do you find your Pacifica community is something, or your Pacifica artist community is something that is really important for your work?
I think it gives it a context, I guess. Like, I know that my work's very different than basically everyone, to be honest, but certainly a lot of those artists. But I guess the conversations that we have just around the work, around, it's about understanding how it links back to the heritage arts, I think is kind of one of the key things, because I talk about making, I talk about repetitive pattern, I'm talking about layering, heritage, and then you look back at your work and you see, okay, this is, coming from carving, it's coming from tattoo, it's coming from tapa, the markings on that tapa, and all these different, te vai, things like that, the bright colours that I use, are influenced by that. So it just, I guess, helps key you in on some of these things. And then you might hear different legends or stories or things like that sometimes, just maybe open up a different way of viewing the work or understanding it perhaps.
And do you mind if viewers don't necessarily see the connection to your Pacific heritage?
No, not at all. I mean, at the end of the day, people see what they want to see, but like I said, my job is to make the work undeniable. And so that way it doesn't matter where you're from and you'll find your way into the work. If you're one of those people that reads the wall labels and, galleries or the fact sheet, then you'll get some understanding from it. But, I mean, when I go to galleries, I never read the wall text. I'm not interested. I want to look at the art. I didn't come to read. And the people understand it or they won't, don't like it or they won't. But if they've made a decision either way, at least they didn't walk past it and didn't see it.
That's right. Like you said earlier, they're engaging, which is important. And quite sort of early on, I guess, in your journey as an artist, you were exhibiting, like you said, but then also you ended up with Scott Laurie Gallery, which is a dealer gallery in Auckland. So how did you make that connection with Scott, and how did you get your work in his gallery?
I mean, I did a bunch of shows, and I think this was maybe, I don't know, maybe 12 shows in, perhaps. I can't quite remember now. But I had a lady, Claire Chamberlain, came into a show that I had at Depot Art Space in Devonport. And she was the one that gave Scott a shoulder tap and said, hey, there's someone that you might be interested in. And so Scott came in, had a look at the show, was quizzing me the way he does about the work and, why are you doing this? And I guess I had my narrative for everything kind of ready to go. And so I just pressed the go button and talked him through the work and where it came from and how it was made. And from there, he gave me the opportunity to be a part of his stable of artists. And, I had a show with him February last year. Almost sold out. Not quite, but almost. And now I've got another show lined up in 2 months' time, mid-May. But yeah, he's been a great supporter of what I've done, encouraged me to, I guess, keep going hard. And, he's also opened up the door for other artists, Pacifica especially, to show in his gallery. So he's been very generous with his wall space, his time. But, that's just the nature of the man.
Yeah, he's a beautiful man. And that's creating another community for you, I guess.
Yeah, there's some connection with the artist, probably not as much as I guess maybe I expected. Maybe I'm not quite sure. Certainly they've been welcoming, but I think sometimes these environments, it's very competitive. It's kind of like if you've got a show now, then means I haven't got a show type of thing. Whereas I guess what I like about my Pacifica community, my crew, is that actually everyone's giving. There's no real hierarchy. There's no competitiveness.
Yeah.
Like everyone wants everyone to win, and if you win, it doesn't mean I lost. It means you win, we all win. And I like that about what we do. And everyone's always encouraging, turning up to shows, doing all they can to support each other.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And how did you actually make those connections with other Pacifica artists?
Yeah, it was mainly through Andy. Like he connected me with different people. And it's just a bit of, osmosis, I guess. You sort of bump into people, someone introduces you to someone else.
And being open to that.
Yeah. To be honest, it's kind of having that no dickhead rule, and they're all good people, and so you kind of find each other and you don't let anyone that's kind of toxic into the group, and from that it just kind of flourishes and grows.
Such a good environment to be in.
Yeah.
And the dealer gallery concept, how do you find being part of that?
To be honest, it's what I always plan. Like I said, I have always wanted to push hard in whatever I do. So for me, if I'm going to come and play artist, then I need to dream the biggest dream that I can and go for it. So, in my ideal world, I'm showing with Gagosian or one of these guys, right? And you're a blue chip gallery, you're a blue chip artist, and you're showing around the world and you're making squillions to make work. The reality is that's the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. So it's, but, as far as working with someone like Scott, the first time I met him, which was up at the Vivian in Matakana, and when I left, I said to my wife, like, if I ever get a chance to work with that guy, he's the guy. And so it's been a blessing to have him represent me in Auckland. I was lucky through Andy that he introduced me to the PG Gallery 192 in Christchurch and Marion and the crew down there. And so I had a show there a couple of years ago. I've got another one coming up mid-September. So I'm lucky that I've had two really good galleries to be associated with.
The connection with the dealer gallery, has that always been something you've aimed for? And does that feel for you that you've sort of made it, or it's affirming your work?
I don't think about, it's not that I've made it, or it certainly doesn't affirm the work, but it's, in the corporate world you have your KPIs, and so one of my key performance indicators is, are you represented? Yes. Now, am I represented in Auckland? Yes. Have you shown in other cities? Yes for Christchurch, but no for Wellington. No, so yeah, it's a matter of just trying to create an environment where being an artist is sustainable. And so the only way that I can, I guess, maximize the potential revenue from the work is to do it through that channel, and hopefully to take it international where, prices are, I guess, larger generally, I guess. But it doesn't affirm the work, because there's enough dealers, there's enough places that show work that where the work is, in my opinion, it's just junk, so, and when it's like that, then it's a case of, people can write a fancy narrative around it, or they can, just talk the nonsense, but actually the work doesn't stand up, and everyone knows it, but because it's got a signature on it, then people will pay the price or whatever. So, it's getting a dealer gallery was never about whether the work was good or not. It was just another channel to sell the work.
Mm. And then, as you say, take that sort of potentially burden of marketing and trying to sell your work away from what you do, and allowing you to concentrate on the work.
Yeah, well, and because like I said, I had all these shows early on. Each one of those, you've got to fill out a form for an expression of interest. And you've got to keep tidying up your bio and get your images, and that all takes time. It takes a lot of time, a lot of mental energy, and it's a good thing to go through, and it's a good thing to help you understand your work more by writing about it. But it's also time away from the studio.
Okay, Sefton, so we're at that lovely time of the podcast where I ask you the 4 questions that I ask all of our guests. So let's start with, what would you say to your younger artistic self?
I think that the one thing I've learned is just to have faith in what you're doing, to paint from your gut and to trust your instincts, and if anything, probably lean into what your thoughts are even more. If you, instead of just having a pinch of salt, just throw in the whole bag, and just trust what you're doing, and if it's true, then it'll resonate with people.
Yeah, good advice. And you've spoken about a few of your favourite artists and artists that you have connections with. But can you talk, please, about some of your other favourite artists, maybe internationally and from New Zealand?
I draw most of my inspiration from artists that are actually offshore. I'm not really sure why, but people that resonate with me are Mark Bradford, Theasta Gates, 2 artists that have really strong social practices. Other people that I guess I draw from, people like Anselm Kiefer, people like Sterling Ruby, and the one artist that whenever I get stuck in a painting, and I just kind of can't get my head around it, Christopher Wool is the guy that I just sort of have a glance through one of the books of his that I have, and even though the styles may be completely different, but there's just something in them that I can always pull, and it's like, there's the magic, and within 2 seconds it's kind of done. Locally in New Zealand, I had the privilege to see the Ralph Hotry retrospective down in Christchurch a couple of years ago, and I guess from a work and also just a lifetime spread of what he did, I found that inspirational, and something that I thought if I ever had an opportunity to put all my life's work into a gallery or a museum, I hope it would look like this. I thought that was really special. And to be honest, other than that, there's people that I bounce off of that are, I guess, friends, more senior artists, people like Roy Good, Jeff Thompson, Gretchen Albrecht, Fatu Feu. Those guys are senior artists, and the fact that they're still chasing those perfect paintings, I find really inspirational.
And as an artist, what do you find is your biggest challenge?
I think now it's places to show. Like I work full time as an artist, and that means that you create a lot of work, and the work's got to go somewhere, and so, some of it will sell, from here and there, maybe out of the studio or something like that. But actually, usually you're creating bodies of work, and you only ever see it in the studio as 1s and 2s, and you don't get an opportunity that often to actually have that body of work on a wall. So yeah, just opportunities to show, galleries to show in, I guess, is one of the key things, and from that, hopefully, then you sell work, and that creates a financial situation so you can continue to make work and live and that as well.
Yeah. And what drives you, do you think, to make the kind of work you make or do the work you do?
I think if you really want to be an artist, you get a calling, and once you get that, you can't ignore it, and once you surrender to that calling, then it's about allowing the work to come through you. People, they talk about, being in a space where time and things sort of dissolve, and it's trying to get into that space and stay there and not let your brain override the instinct that comes for you, that comes. And so all I'm doing is I'm passing that energy through me through a lens, and one of the lenses, that kind of that wabi-sabi lens, that industrial lens. Another one's the Pacificka one, and I just hope that allows an output at the end of it that comes together and makes the world a better place.
Well, thank you, Sefton. That has been the most interesting, inspirational chat I've had in a long time. So thank you so very much for sharing your life with us and for coming out to Muriwai.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to tell my story, and hopefully someone can pick something out of it that may assist them in their journey.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.